Okay, so Lucy, you were talking earlier about the problems of timber and damp surveyors and RICS valuation surveyors recommending PCA. So
I would say every week we get a number of, sometimes 2 or 3 a day, a number of people who ring up and say, I've had a RICS level 3 survey for a house purchase, they'd recommend I get a PCA damp survey, or I've had a mortgage valuation and the lender are telling me I need to have a PCA damp survey. At which point I explain it doesn't have to be PCA, they're just telling you need a damp survey. The level 3 surveyors should have covered the damp anyway. They didn't, so they've deferred it to somebody else. And now you've got to get a damp survey, and the mortgage lenders seem to think it's got to be PCA.
Does a RICS level 3 surveyor not have the ability to understand damp? Correct me if I'm wrong, but to be a building surveyor, surely you have to understand water as being the cause of 98% of building defects.
Well, I can't comment on what RICS standards are, and I can't comment on what the content of surveyor training is, but clearly the vast majority of RICS surveys that I see, in fact I would say 100% of RICS surveys that I see, do not properly comment on damp. They will say things like, I have detected damp, usually with images showing a prong meter. I have detected damp, you need to get in a damp specialist.
So they've used a damp meter that doesn't measure moisture, it measures electrical current, so it's completely inappropriate. And they're offloading responsibility for 98% of the faults in the building to someone from an organisation, the PCA, that issues, from what I've seen and from what we know, so-called qualifications for a weekend training course.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it just seemed very strange that you would engage the services of a surveyor. We're talking level 3 surveys here, and obviously we're talking about older properties. So you would engage the services of a surveyor to do a level 3 survey. That surveyor, who is a member of RICS, has probably done a 3-year training course in building surveying. Obviously some people come other routes, but the standard route is through the academic route. So you've probably done a 3-year training course, you've applied for your RICS where you've had to submit things, demonstrate your knowledge. So there's 3 or 4 years of learning there, minimum. And you are then going to a property, assessing it, and then referring the major part of it to somebody who's probably done a weekend training course. It just seems very, very odd.
Well, it's not odd, it's putting the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors into a position where clearly they are incompetent, negligent, and should be struck off as an organisation.
So what was the joint methodology statement or whatever it was called about? Because I was of the understanding that was to prevent exactly this kind of thing happening. Was it not?
It was. That was the original intent of it. And when I wrote the first draft of that and sat around a very large table in RICS headquarters in London with a load of luminaries, including John Edwards, Professor John Edwards, Professor Duncan Phillips, Stephen Boniface, who I think was head of RICS at some point, members of the representatives, RICS representatives of UK Finance, and 1 or 2 others. And we sat around the table and discussed this thing, and it was indeed intended to stop the problems with RICS members not understanding moisture. The problem was that it was very rapidly taken over by the damp industry, and for some completely bizarre reason, the RICS actually wanted to print a document that had the PCA Damp Wally logo on the front cover and associated that with historic England.
Yeah, and it's still.
So at that point, the thing fell into a huge hole. It's never been pushed to RICS members, so they have a piece of documentation that if it was actually stuck to and made mandatory, no RICS surveyor would be able to carry a damp meter, and they would have to actually learn about moisture and dampness in buildings, but it's not being pushed by RICS, so it's not happening.
And the guidance is very woolly. If you look, I've tried, I thought I'd read somewhere that, particularly for a level 3 survey, they are not supposed to refer, so they're supposed to do the survey themselves. They're not supposed to refer to some other kinds of specialists, but I can't find that guidance now. It's all very woolly. The guidance is very not very definitive.
There is a section in their so-called professional guidance notes that says that at a level 3 they are supposed to actually use their own brains, and they are not allowed to refer to third-party experts unless it's totally unavoidable. So, for instance, if you're looking at electrical installations, it's plainly sensible that you refer to an electrical contractor to do a separate survey. In the case of damp, moisture, water is fundamental to building surveying. You cannot offload responsibility for the most fundamental cause of building deterioration to some third party, as I call them, wallies, with no qualification, no experience, no background. And that is so ingrained in the RICS system that my view is that RICS is not fit for purpose. How can that organisation be fit for purpose if it is recommending unqualified idiots?
Well, they'll say that they are qualified because they've got their CSWW or whatever.
Yeah, well, CSRT and CSSW, we put one of our guys through this some time ago, and it was a weekend course. He came out of it as a member of PCA with CSRT. It took him 2 days, and all he learned about was health and safety rules for injecting chemicals. It's a farce. This is not a qualification. It has no.
It doesn't, no, but the point is they shouldn't be referring in the first place to
No,
third parties, whoever, however well qualified or not those third parties are. If somebody's paid for a level 3 survey, surely that should be comprehensive. That should include damp and timber.
Absolutely it should. Which
Because
is why
as you
I
have
say
said many times, that is absolutely fundamental to understanding how the building, the condition of the building.
Yeah, and that's why I am absolutely firm on the fact that RICS as an organisation is completely negligent and incompetent and should not be allowed to practice. Their members need to be re-educated.
So RICS aside, sometimes it's the lender. So the lender will do it. Some people don't have a level 3 survey, they just have a valuation survey. And the valuation surveyor will come in and say, you need to have, now they don't say a damp survey, they always say a PCA damp survey. Why is that? Why don't they just say you have to have a damp survey?
Well, that takes you back to the meeting that I had in RICS headquarters, where there was a Wally from UK Finance, which is the organisation that oversees all of the lenders, sitting in the room with me, shaking his head and saying, "Oh, I've not heard that the PCA are not very good people. I thought they were a very reputable organisation." To which my response was, no, they are a bunch of chemical fraudsters. Why are we even attempting to include the PCA in some sort of guidance to RICS chartered surveyors in terms of the advice they give about moisture in buildings? And the UK finance representative basically ran and ran for cover. He more or less covered his eyes and didn't speak for the rest of the meeting.
So what's the solution to this?
Somebody needs to take UK finance and RICS to court. The system is so badly broken.
Yeah. We know that we've managed to help some clients avoid it, and we've explained that if they have an independent damp survey, that should be acceptable, and it has. You know, famously, rather recently, we had one in Gloucester, if you remember. There was a house that was recommended by the PCA pre-purchase situation. £77,000 worth of damp-proof treatments were recommended by a PCA surveyor. So one of our surveyors went in and explained how to make the house warm and dry without those treatments, and the lender accepted that, our report.
Yeah.
So you can get round it. Sometimes it's getting through to the clients that's hard. Our clients, they're insistent that they have to have PCA, and when they find out we're not members of the PCA, they say, oh well, I can't use your services then. It's shocking, really.
It is shocking, and it's not going to change until somebody in a high place takes up the cudgels and supports us.
And other damp independent. There are others, not we're the best, but there are others. Yeah.
Yeah, but the bottom line is that a large organisation that sets itself up as, I think PCA, the RICS's strapline is something like the mark of property professionalism, which absolutely it is not.
Yeah.
And until RICS turns around and says, actually, we need to be seen as proper professionals, this is not going to go away.
No.
And I have said to RICS on numerous occasions, I'm very happy to help train their surveyors in actually becoming proper surveyors. But they don't like that. They see someone like me as a maverick fighting them. I'm not. I have the interests of the public at heart, which is why I wrote The Warm Dry Home. I'm trying to educate everybody, and that book is not aimed at attacking RICS. It's aimed at educating the public, surveyors, architects, environmental health officers, anyone that wants to listen. Actually, this is the background to damp. It's not particularly difficult, and you just need to understand the basics. And the industry as a whole needs to stop its complete, utter, total reliance on silly little electronic things that don't measure anything.
Yeah, we'll do another post on that, because there's an interesting situation, isn't there, where a member of RICS, high up member of RICS, is saying the problem starts with a damp meter, and then the most recent RICS guideline says use a damp meter, but we'll do another post on that.